The most feared man in Seoul was on his knees, crying. Not because of a rival. Not because of a raid. Because of 2 babies who hadn't stopped screaming in 14 months. And nobody, not one of the 70 nannies he hired, could tell him why. Hey besties! Welcome back to another irresistible Mafia romance story. I missed you. Before we dive in, tell me in the comment where you're watching from. I love seeing how far my girls are. And if you're new here, don't forget to like, share with your friends, and subscribe. Stay with me, because these stories, they only get crazier. Park Dae-jung controlled half of Seoul's underground. Judges answered his calls. Politicians disappeared when he stopped protecting them. Entire districts ran on his fear. But at 3 a.m., crouched outside a nursery door with his back against the wall and his tie loose around his neck, he was just a broken man listening to his children cry. The 70th nanny walked out that same night. Didn't even ask for her final pay. His housekeeper, Mrs. O, stood in the kitchen doorway and watched her boss with the kind of sadness only old women who've seen too much can carry. She had an idea. She'd had it for weeks. She just hadn't been brave enough to say it, because what she was about to suggest made no medical sense whatsoever. There's a girl, she said quietly. She cleans offices in Mapo. Young widow. Has a baby about 3 months old. I've seen that baby calm an entire waiting room just by being in it. I don't know how to explain it. I just know it works. Dae-jung looked up. His eyes were red. Bring her. That was all he said. Bring her. Across the city, Yeon-ji was already awake. She was always already awake. Sleep was a luxury she'd stopped budgeting for since Jae-won died, since the funeral she paid for with borrowed money, since the hospital bills she was still paying in installments, since the night she came home to a cold apartment and realized that the only warm thing left in her life was the baby on her chest. She had 11 missed calls from numbers she didn't recognize. She ignored them. Then Mrs. O's name appeared and she picked up. She didn't know whose house she was going to. Mrs. O hadn't said. All she said was, good pay. One day. Bring the baby. They're fine with it. That last part was strange, but Yeon-ji didn't ask questions. She needed the money. She strapped Ji-Uraeum to her back, pulled on her worn coat, and stepped out into the dark. She realized something was wrong the moment the car arrived. Not a taxi. A black SUV with tinted windows and a driver who didn't make eye contact. She almost turned back. Then Ji-Uraeum made a soft sound against her back, that small, peaceful exhale he always made, and she got in. The penthouse was the most beautiful thing she had ever walked into. And the most terrifying. Armed men stood in the lobby like furniture. Marble floors. No photographs anywhere on the walls. The kind of blank elegance that didn't want to be remembered. Mrs. O appeared instantly, took her coat, and leaned close. Keep your head down. Clean fast. Say nothing about what you see. Yeon-ji nodded. She understood one thing immediately. She was not in a normal house. She had been scrubbing the kitchen counter for 20 minutes when it happened. Ji-Uraeum stirred on her back. Just a little stretch, a soft coo, the sound he made when he was happy. And from behind the sealed door down the hallway, the crying stopped. Just like that. Mid-scream. Silence. Every person in that penthouse froze. The guards looked at each other. Mrs. O pressed her hand to her mouth. Yeon-ji stood completely still, cloth in hand, heart hammering. Then the door opened, and Park Dae-jung stepped out. He was taller than she expected. Broader. The kind of man who took up space without trying. He looked at his guards. He looked at Mrs. O. Then his eyes landed on Yeon-ji, specifically, on the baby strapped to her back, and something moved across his face that she had never seen on a powerful man before. Relief. Raw, desperate, almost childlike relief. He walked toward her slowly. Yeon-ji didn't move. Couldn't. He stopped 2 feet away and looked at Ji-Uraeum the way a drowning man looks at a rope. Then he looked at her. What's your name? Yeon-ji, she whispered. Yeon-ji. He said it like he was filing it somewhere important. Then, you're not leaving tonight. She opened her mouth. He raised one hand, not aggressive, just final. Your rate just tripled. Your baby stays with mine. I'll explain the rest in the morning. He turned and walked back down the hallway. The door clicked shut. Yoonji stood in the middle of the most dangerous kitchen in Seoul, holding a cleaning cloth, with a sleeping baby on her back and zero plan for what came next. She should have run. Every nerve in her body said run. But something else, something quieter and older than logic, made her stay. She would regret that. And she would never regret it. Both things, at the same time, forever. What she didn't know yet, what nobody in that penthouse knew, was that Ji-Uraim had been in this family's story long before tonight. Long before she ever got that phone call. Long before she even met Jaewon. The truth was already in the walls of that house. Waiting. 3 days passed. Yoonji told herself every morning that today was the day she would leave. Every morning, one of the twins would reach for her face with a tiny fist, and she would stay 1 more hour. 1 more hour always became another day. Daejung watched her. Not the way men usually watched her, not with hunger or dismissal. He watched her the way someone watches a fire they don't fully understand. Like he was trying to figure out if it was warming him or about to burn him. He never came too close. But he was never far. On the 4th morning, he sat across from her at breakfast for the first time. No guards in the room. Just him, her, 3 babies, and a silence that had weight. He poured her tea without asking if she wanted any. She noticed his hands, scarred across the knuckles, steady as stone. The hands of a man who had done things she would never ask about. Your husband, he said quietly. What was he like? The question hit her like cold water. Why? He looked into his cup. Just wondering what kind of man you chose. She studied him for a long moment. Gentle. He was the gentlest person I ever met. Nothing like. She stopped herself. He finished her sentence without blinking. Nothing like me. She didn't deny it. He almost smiled. That almost smile did something to her she immediately resented. She was still deciding what to do with that feeling when Ha-seon walked in. The temperature in the room dropped 5 degrees. Ha-seon was stunning in the way that expensive, unhappy things are stunning, flawless and untouchable and somehow sad. She looked at the breakfast table. At the tea Daejung had poured. At the specific way he was looking at Yoonji. And her face arranged itself into a perfect, porcelain calm that was more frightening than any expression Yoonji had ever seen. How sweet, she said. To no one in particular. To everyone. She left without eating. That afternoon, an envelope appeared under Yoonji's door. Thick with cash. No note. She knew exactly who it was from. She didn't touch it. That was her first mistake. That night, Minute Kyu found her in the laundry room, the one place in the penthouse without cameras, a fact she only understood later meant he had chosen it deliberately. He shut the door. His voice dropped to almost nothing. You need to leave. Tonight. Not tomorrow. Tonight. I'm not afraid of Ha-seon, she said, more bravely than she felt. This isn't about Ha-seon. He looked at Ji-Uraim in her arms. Something in his expression cracked open, just for a second, before he sealed it shut again. It's about who your son is. Who his father really was. The room tilted. What did you just say? Minute Kyu reached into his jacket and pulled out a photograph. Old. Creased down the middle like it had been folded and unfolded 100 times. 2 young men, side by side. Same jaw. Same eyes. Same mouth. One of them was Daejung. Young, before the scars. The other one was Jaewon. Her husband. Her gentle, quiet, nothing like you husband. The photograph fell out of her fingers. They were brothers, Minute Kyu said. Twins. Daejung was supposed to inherit the family. Jaewon refused, walked away from all of it, changed his name, disappeared. Daejung never forgave him. Never looked for him either. Too proud. His voice went quieter. He doesn't know Jaewon is dead. He doesn't know you exist. And he absolutely does not know that Ji-Uraim is his nephew. The crying. The 14 months of relentless, unstoppable crying. The twins hadn't been sick. They had been grieving, for a bloodline, a presence, a heartbeat that matched theirs. Ji-Uraim carried that heartbeat. Yoonji's legs stopped working. She sat on the floor. Minute Kyu didn't try to help her up. He just stood there and let her fall apart for exactly 60 seconds because that was all the time they had. If Ha-seon finds out first, he said, she will use it to destroy you. She will tell Daejung that you came here knowing that this was a play for the family fortune. He will believe her before he believes you, because that's what fear does to smart men. It makes them stupid about the people they're starting to trust. Yeonji looked up. And if he finds out from me? Minute Kyu was quiet for a long moment. Then everything depends on whether he's more like the man his brother was, or the man he became. He picked up the photograph and left it on the dryer beside her. She sat on that laundry room floor for a long time. Ji-Uraeum slept in her arms, peaceful, knowing nothing, carrying everything. She thought about Jaewon. About the way he used to hold her face when he laughed. About the one thing he'd told her, just once, just quietly, that he had a brother somewhere in this city. That it was complicated. That some doors, once closed, should stay closed. She had never pushed him on it. Now she understood why. She picked up the photograph. Looked at both men, the one she had loved and buried, and the one currently sleeping 40 feet away with his children for the first time in 14 months. Because her son had walked into his house and done what no money could buy, she made a decision. She was going to tell him the truth. Tonight. Before Ha-seon could weaponize it. What she didn't know, what nobody had told her, was that Ha-seon had already found out 2 hours ago. And Ha-seon never waited. She found Daejung in his study. He was standing at the window, back to the door, looking out at Seoul like he owned it, because he did. She knocked once. He didn't turn around. I need to tell you something, she said. And I need you to let me finish before you react. Something in her voice made him turn. He looked at her face, really looked, and whatever he saw there made him close his laptop and sit down. He gestured at the chair across from him. She Saturday. She put the photograph on the desk between them. He didn't move for a long time. Then one hand reached out and picked it up. His jaw tightened. A vein appeared at his temple. The room became the kind of quiet that precedes something irreversible. Where did you get this? His voice was barely audible. It doesn't matter. What matters is that Jaewon was my husband. She held his gaze. He died 8 months before I walked into your house. And the baby you've been letting sleep next to your children, he's your nephew. The silence that followed was the longest of her life. Daejung stood up so fast the chair scraped back. He walked to the window. Then to the door. Then back to the window. She watched a man who controlled an empire completely lose control of his own body for 30 full seconds. When he finally stopped moving, he pressed both fists against the glass and stared at nothing. He's dead. Not a question. A man learning, in real time, that the door he was too proud to open had been permanently closed. Yes. How long ago? 14 months. He made a sound she would never be able to describe. Not a cry. Not a word. Something that had never needed a name before because most people never felt it. The specific grief of realizing you wasted the last chance you didn't know you had. She stood up slowly. She didn't touch him. She just stood near him the way you stand near something that might shatter. He talked about you, she said quietly. Not often. But when he did, it wasn't with anger. It was with something sadder than that. Daejung turned. His eyes were dry but devastated. He should have hated me. He wasn't built for hate. That was the whole point, wasn't it? Something moved between them in that moment. Not romance, not yet, something older and more dangerous. Recognition. 2 people who had loved the same man in completely different ways, standing in the wreckage of what his absence left behind. Then the door opened. Ha-seon walked in holding Ji-Uraeum. Every nerve in Yeonji's body fired at once. Ha-seon's face was a masterpiece of controlled fury, smiling, elegant, and absolutely lethal. She looked at the photograph on the desk. She looked at Yeonji. She looked at her husband. I see she told you her little story, Ha-seon said softly. Before I could tell you mine. Daejung's eyes went to his son, to Ji-Uraeum, calm as always in Ha-seon's arms, unaware he was being used as a weapon. Put him down, Ha-seon. I found something interesting this afternoon. She reached into her pocket with her free hand and placed a document on the desk beside the photograph. Her husband, your dear lost brother, had a life insurance policy. Beneficiary updated 3 weeks before he died. You know who he changed it to? She tilted her head at Yunji. Her. And the policy was arranged through one of our shell companies. Which means she has always known exactly whose money she was touching. Yunji's mouth went dry. That's not. She came here on purpose, Ha-seon continued, voice like silk over a blade. The baby, the silence, the tears, all of it performed. She found out about the twins through Mrs. O, she engineered the introduction, and she has been working her way into this family one breakfast at a time. It was so well constructed that even Yunji almost doubted herself for a second. Dae-jung looked at Yunji. The openness that had been in his face 60 seconds ago was closing like a wound sealing over. She could see him choosing between the man he was becoming and the man he had always been, and the old man was faster, meaner, and had 30 years of practice. Is that true? He asked. No. She stepped forward. The policy exists because Jae-won was careful. He grew up in this world, your world, and he spent his whole life preparing for worst cases. I didn't even know which company held it until after he was gone. I have never touched that money. Not one. You can verify that in 10 minutes. Silence. Then Dae-jung looked at Minute Kyu, who had appeared in the doorway without anyone noticing. Because Minute Kyu always appeared without anyone noticing. Verify it, Dae-jung said. Minute Kyu nodded once and pulled out his phone. Ha-seon's composure flickered. Just barely. Just enough. The verification took 8 minutes. Minute Kyu read the result from his screen without expression. Account untouched. No withdrawals. No transfers. Since the date of death, nothing. Ha-seon said nothing. She set Ji-Uraim down on the sofa with a gentleness that somehow felt like a threat and walked out of the room without another word. Dae-jung stood in the middle of his study surrounded by a photograph, a document, and the ruins of a story he had told himself for years, that cutting his brother off had been necessary. Clean. A business decision. He looked at Ji-Uraim. At his nephew. At his brother's son, who had crawled into this broken family and simply refused to let it stay broken. Then he looked at Yunji. Stay, he said. Just that. The same word as the first night. But it meant something completely different now. Now it was a question disguised as a statement. Now it had please buried inside it. She looked at him for a long time. I told you on day 1, she said quietly. I set my own terms. He almost smiled. The same almost smile from breakfast. The one she immediately resented. The one she hadn't stopped thinking about. Name them, he said. She opened her mouth. And every light in the penthouse went out. In the darkness, 3 sounds happened in rapid succession. Glass breaking, Ji-Uraim crying, and Minute Kyu's voice cutting through the black, sharp, low, and absolutely terrified for the first time in his life. Sir, Ha-seon is gone. And she took the twins. If you want part 2, like, share, and drop a comment telling me you need it. Because Ha-seon just became the most dangerous person in this story. And what she does next? Nobody sees it coming.